just want a ground for the player to walk around in. Doesn't have to be big or anything. Just for the sake of prototyping. And so this actual capsule isn't going to be rendered while the scene is playing. So we're going to disable the renderer. So basically all that means is the object is still there, but the camera is not actually rendering the geometry. And the capsule needs a way to see. So basically what we're going to do is move this, well, actually for the sake of this, we're going to keep this on for reference. But the first person camera is going to need, or sorry, the first person controller is going to need a camera so that it has, you know, eyes. So basically what we're going to do is just line that up with it to about head level. You want to center it as good as possible, right about there. And so that now we're going to physically attach, because it's already in the same location, but now we need to tell the engine that it's actually attached to this object. So you move the camera onto the capsule. And let's name this player. And let's name this ground. And so now, in order for, because now when you run the game, you're just going to have a stationary camera. But that's not going to be any good because you need the camera to be able to understand what the keyboard and the player is telling it to do. So what you have to do is write a script that's going to control the capsule and tell it where to go. I've already done this to speed up the process. I'll show you how this works. Alright, so essentially all you're starting here is, because there has to be two basic variables when you're moving the mouse or anything, the controller, to turn where the camera looks. You need two vector things that give you, you know, as we've learned in physics class, a scalar with an added direction, and those are going to be represented as floating points right here, which are going to be applied to the vectors. And so here's the first function, which basically establishes the character that we're playing as the game object, this game object, the player. And then on every single frame that the scene renders, this function is called. So basically what you're doing here is you're getting input from the X mouse axis. So every time you move your mouse X, it's picking that up. And it's multiplying it by the parameters, the floating point parameters that we've established up here to change the sensitivity, basically how fast or sensitive the mouse is, and the smoothing so that it doesn't jut around. And this is just basically a lerp function, is increments, so that it doesn't just jump from one value to the next. It moves in a smooth translation, or transition, I guess. And this basically does the same thing up here. But there's a problem because when you're playing a first-person game, you're emulating a person's movement, and you don't want the camera to be able to go above 90 degrees because no person can look around in a 360-degree angle. So what I've done here is limit the mouse axes to 90 degrees. So basically all that does is that prevents you from moving in a unnatural way. And basically what we're doing is just the character is being moved based on the movements that the mouse makes. It's basically telling the game object here to respond to your mouse movements and actually physically transform the object's position. And so as you can see now when we play the game, you're able to look around. So now that we have the character being able to look in all directions except for 90 degrees upwards and downwards, now we need it to actually move when you tell it to move like you do in video games. So I've also written script for that, and I'll show you how it works. So we're going to add this controller not to the camera but to the physical capsule of the player. And so this first function, all it does is lock the cursor. So all that means is that when you actually press play, your cursor's not on the screen, so it just disappears because you don't want your cursor to be moving while you're moving the mouse. And then as it goes on, you're getting access from the inputs on the keyboard that you've determined in the project settings. You basically write out the functions that you want for each keystroke. So for this, I'm just using the arrow keys, or WASD. And you're multiplying those translations by the speed that you've determined up here. And so basically, that's a public variable, so that means it can be changed from the physical engine itself. You can speed it up the character's movement or slow it down. And so then I have it later, if you want to exit the game, you can press escape and then your mouse will reappear, and then you can exit out the window. And that's basically it. It just gets translations from, or transforms from the keys that you want it to, and it'll move around according to the keys that you press. So as you can see, as I press the right key, it goes to the right. And as I press the left key, it goes to the left, up and down. And there you have it, first person movement. You're moving around, looking the way you want to move and going there. That's basically it.